Hello, good evening, and you're welcome to Education in Progress in Great Africa. My name is Frank Mudia, and you're still on to Cleveland TV. Like always, I like to remind you that Cleveland TV in Diaspora is an online platform created to bring together Africans back home and in diaspora to celebrate and appreciate their successes, achievements, businesses, and lots more. If you've not signed up with us today, I encourage you to please do so on www.cleveland.com. Thank you. My guest this evening is Mr. Rico Jack, and we'll be discussing the reason he's working in Africa to create an alternative to schools that uses the colonial system of indoctrination and military style training. It's an interesting one. So if you have a child or children in school, this interview is actually for you. Please stay tuned and join us as we discuss this. Mr. Rico, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on this show.
You're welcome. That would start with this. Let's get to know who Mr. Rico Jack is, please.
Sorry, could you say that again?
Let's get to meet you. Could you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Okay. So my name is Rico. I've grown up in the northeast of England for most of my life since the age of 10. I was born in Malawi, which I'm very proud of. So for the past 39 years, I've lived in the UK, but I've retained my Malawi passport because when we left as children, the promise we made to our father was that we would return to Malawi or to Africa with something to offer. So I've returned to Tanzania with myself to offer, my experience and my energy. And I think that I'm one of the contributors to the great change that is happening in Africa, the great change in terms of re-education and of telling our story by our people, for our people first and foremost, and for the rest of the world to understand the contributions of African people to the world that we live in today.
Impressive. So if you are working on such a project, it means you are an educationist, right?
I am. I think we all are, for a start. But I think that I've become an educator because of necessity. I feel that we communicate best when we're sharing. And that's how I see education. We share. It isn't training. And this is what I was talking about in terms of the military style training. What our children are getting from the Oxford and Cambridge education system that rules the world, and it really does rule the world, is training.
Sorry, please. We'll actually get to that. Okay, but let's form a basic around the topic itself. Now, as an educationist, you just mentioned one that education is sharing. Now, apart from that, what does education mean to you as an educationist?
So, as an educationist, I think education is about educing, which is where the word comes from, to take out of. So, what do you take out of? We are educing or bringing out of the brilliance of the child. We are all children, no matter what age we are. The child is locked inside of us. And I look at the child as a supercomputer. And the supercomputer needs a program from the outside, which is the adult, to dig inside to connect with that supercomputer, the power that drives a human being. So when we look at children and we say, oh, you're acting like a child, or that's child's play, we really don't know what we're talking about, because the children have actually got a supercomputer inside them, and they're closer connected to that supercomputer than the adults are. The adults, if you will, they're like a crusty shell on the outside of this lava that came from the center of the earth. And then we form this rock shell, which protects us from being burnt by the lava. But the lava is also energy. It's also power. So I see the children to be closer to that power. About the supercomputer that is the child, and we all have a child within us. As an adult, you create this rock shell or this crusty shell around the supercomputer, which I see as the lava, which came from the earth, which lava is fire, it's energy. So this energy that came from the earth is in the child. And we try to insulate that too much. And we almost dumb the child down by giving them what the rest of the world seems to be calling education. It's not education, because we are covering the child with this crusty shell as they're growing up. More of this crusty shell grows, and then we call that an adult. I think children are brilliant, but it's the adult world that puts this layer upon layer on top of that brilliance. And we are dumbed down as human beings. And by the time we reach maturity, we've lost a lot of our brilliance. Most of us, not all of us. Most of us cannot reconnect to that brilliance because it's too hidden. So my concept, or my understanding of what education is bringing out that brilliance. And that doesn't mean I will stand here with the answers and you will have an exam where you have to tell me the answers I've already found. That's not brilliance. That's training. Yeah, that's the military style training, which is you will do what we tell you to do.
Bringing out the brilliance of a child. Now, comparing what you just explained, let's relate it to the African standard of education. How do you rate African standard of education?
How do I rate it?
Yeah, the African standard of way of education.
It's not African. So I know a lot of people out there, especially educators, will want to switch off at this point, or think I'm maybe a bit aloof, or dumbing things down a bit in terms of education. But we are not seeing education in Africa. If we were seeing education, we would be the space scientists who are traveling to Mars. We would be the Elon Musks, all right, who rule this planet. We'll be the Jeff Bezos if we had education in Africa. We don't have education. What we have is colonization, and capitalism is part of that. So our children are being told to replicate a model that enslaved us. So the enslavement period was all about capitalist gain. And even when they morphed that, because it never ended, they morphed that into neocolonialism. We have capitalist gain now, and our people are fighting for the buck, the dollar. And actually, who is behind that dollar? It's not us. It's the people that enslaved us. So now we're mentally enslaved by the dollar and financially enslaved by the dollar. And we're telling our children to get a job. We're not telling them to use their brilliance to form a new type of work, or a new understanding of what human beings can do on this planet. Now, you remember that Africans built those pyramids 15,000 years ago. Imagine where we'd be right now if we never had that period of miseducation. I think we would be in maybe a few different planets right now, mining those planets for materials that we need here on Earth to make life better and more comfortable for humans. So I don't see education in Africa. What I see is training. We are being trained to be the producers, to be the drones. Africans export 80% of their produce. 80%. Now Europe keeps 70-something% within Europe of its produce. So we're only keeping 20% within our nearly 4 billion people, which is a pittance compared to what Africa can produce. The most valuable things that Africa is producing are being mined and taken out of Africa by non-Africans. I don't see education.
That's very impressive. Now, I know you've said one or two things about what you feel about education in Africa, and then the myth behind it. But now, I really need to speak more on what you call the military style training. Can you just elaborate on that? Let's get to it.
So in your military style training, you have a teacher or a commander at the front, and then you have rows of soldiers, or I call them drones, because they're not supposed to have an identity. They're supposed to be the same as each other and follow orders without question. What do we have in the classroom? We have a corporal or a teacher at the front. We have these rows of children who are facing forwards and seeing other people's heads, which creates anxiety, creates in the human world and the animal world, it creates a third eye issue where you know someone is looking at the back of your head and you're vulnerable, you're most vulnerable in the back of your head, right? This is what the colonizers did when they were a tiny little country. England on the map is about this big. And we call that Great Britain, this tiny little island, and it ruled most of the known world. Yeah, it was the empire with the sun, where the sun never set. Okay, so it ruled most of the known world. It didn't rule that through power and might because it had a small population of people. It ruled that by controlling the way people thought. by deceiving, which if you look at the English language, which we're speaking right now, it's the most deceptive language I've come across. There's so many things that can be misconstrued or said in a slightly different way to mean something else. Now, other languages are a lot more straight line and more precise. So when you look at the military system, these people say that they're coming to liberate the world. Yeah, they're going to distribute democracy. They're going to free people from dictatorship. They are the dictators. They are the ones that dictated their systems to us, whether it's religion or whether it's what they understand of spiritualism, which is very little. Those systems were dictated to Africans and packaged to be more progressive or mighty than what African people had. Totally negating the fact that civilization came from Africa. Totally negating that engineering, astronomy, physics, philosophy, all of these ways of using the brain and the environment around us came from Africa.
Exactly.
And the only way you could get people to understand that or to go along with that is to treat them as drones, to get them to, take away their autonomy and to make them into like military style soldiers who just follow orders.
Now, okay, when you say this, whose fault is it? Did you just say that education started from Africa, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah.
All right. Now, how come the Western world has taken control over what was supposed to be our own primary rights over here? Now, whose responsibility was it to have maintained that standard that African sets?
That's a very, very good line of questions. I think personally, I'm not about blaming. I'm not about shaming or pointing fingers, because every time you point a finger, you've got three fingers pointing back at you. Yeah. And you have the responsibility to back up what it is you're pointing out. What I'm pointing out is what has been pointed out by educators for the past 30 years. And most of them, believe it or not, are European educators who are telling us that we're not educating our European children, never mind African children, because African children have been even more controlled than the European ones. The European ones can deflect going to school. Let's just call it that. They hate going to school. African people will walk 5 miles to go to school. So they're dedicated in this education. But are they getting education? And this is the big point that answers your question. We were told we were getting education when they gave us a book. When we looked into this book and we started to read their ways of writing, which we taught them a long, long time ago, and they adapted and changed. We had all of these stories in this book that we had to learn and understand. And we said, okay, now we understand. And we looked up and said, okay, here's your book. We understand it. And at that point, they had our land. Yeah, they had everything organized around us, that they were in control. So there's a them and us going on in this conversation, but I don't want it to just be like that. Human beings on this planet are being controlled by a force, and the force has got nothing to do with education. In fact, it's counter-intuitive or counterproductive towards education. It's about creating drones, human drones or battery cells, who feed into this system of control. Now, when you look at how Africa has been overrun, people call it governed, I don't, overrun over the past 400 years, you can see this system of creating these convenient battery cells that feed into this energy source or this energy drain that other people can then use to exploit, to live how they want to live. So I think it's easy to point the finger and say our leaders. We don't have leaders, we have misleaders generally. One or two leaders out there cannot fight 500 to 1,000 misleaders. So the true leaders are not allowed to lead. And Sankara and other people that we can point out, Lumumba in history, testament to that. Every time we try to lead and to self-govern, every time we try to bring our people up to be the land of upright people, to have that kind of pride in ourselves, take responsibility, and to produce what we can produce, the very best of us. we are assassinated. And France will happily tell you, we will keep assassinating your people if you try to free yourself. Not in those words, but that's what they've said publicly. We have killed over 22 heads of state in West Africa alone. And without Africa and the produce that we're stealing from Africa, France would be a third world country. I think it was Jacques Chirac or somebody like that said that. Yeah. So you look at all this and you put it together. You can easily blame other people and say this, or you can easily blame the so-called leaders and say they're the ones that are causing the problem. I think what it is a mind shift for all humanity, but it has to start from us, from the Africans who want to free ourselves. We have to shift our mind into a new gear. We can't point fingers and say this, because the three fingers that point back at us are more important. What can we do ourselves to free the next generation? Because this generation is still enslaved. The next generation has a better hope of being freed. So how do we do that? How do we put these systems down? There are educators out there doing it, believe it or not, but they're not getting the limelight. They're not getting promoted by us, never mind the rest of the world. And we're still using these standards of Cambridge and Oxford and all these things as if they mean something. Because when you look at the Western world, the best performers of education are actually the Finnish, who believe in education through play, learn through play, yeah, for the first part of the child's life. No homework, don't stress the child out, there are no exams, yeah? All of this stuff creates people who are then more intelligent and able to tap into their supercomputer and be themselves more. And that's the Finnish education system. Which European country is copying the Finnish education system, the most successful education system for them? I don't know one.
Right.
You know?
Right. We'll certainly get to the way out. Okay, we'll certainly get to the way out. But for now, let's take a look at African kind of education. Like you rightly said, we prefer, or we are so used to giving multiple homeworks, trashing, and then how trying to dominate the students and then make them conform to the teaching environment. Okay, we are so used to that, and then we actually came to believe that is the way education is supposed to be. In your own way, though, in your own understanding, would you call that education?
So that's the way education is supposed to be. For whom? Yeah, do you see what I mean? So for whom is it serving for our children to be subordinate? Who is it serving for children not to be free thinkers, for them not to be creative, for them not to be physically brilliant? Because, you know, PE and all of those things are distilled into
just following the patterns.
Sorry?
I said just being taught to follow an already laid out pattern.
Yeah,
that's what we see in Africa.
Yeah. So the laid out pattern is what I was saying earlier, where if I have the answer here on the sheet and I want you to get that answer, are we creating anything new? No, what we're doing is we're regurgitating what I already know, and I'm in control. So I want you to serve me, to give me an understanding that you are under my control. So the only time when you get your degree or when you get your, A in your exam, the only time that I am confident that I have you under control is when you get your A, because I don't need to teach you any more about what I already know. That is not education, that's training. That's what we see in Africa. We see our people getting degrees and then going back to the farm. Once they've proved to the people who educated them, apparently educated them, that they are under control, it's okay, cool, we don't have a job for you. Go back to your farm and be, you know, no threat to development, no threat to progress. You will not bring anything new to the table. That's fine, we've got you under control. So you might think education is getting a bachelor's in this or that, and we celebrate that. You know, so when I've been on dating sites or whatever, a bachelor in this, a bachelor in that, you know, I've got this degree. Great. It doesn't say anything about education. What that says is conformism. You've been able to conform to a standard that has already been set for you. That's right. That's right. And I think children have taught me. Sorry.
Right. You spoken extensively on what I want to ask as my next question. Now I want you to because for the audience watching this, I really want them to get a full picture of what we are trying to bring on board. Okay. Now, what is the relationship or is the difference between training and education?
Yeah, so I think I can be quite passionate, and for people who are watching this, I don't mean to sound as if the ones that are doing what we're currently calling education are in any way wrong. You're doing a great job. You're working with children, and you're inspiring them to learn how to learn. That's a great start. But to go a level above that is to be able to use how to learn to develop new things. So when you start to develop new things, children will come up to you and say, okay, we have this camera on the phone. We think we can use it to do x-rays. So I don't know if there is an x-ray app, but you can get an app for everything now. So in the past, we would have said, no, these phones, they have a camera so that we can see each other to do Skype calls. And a child will come forward and say, well, I think we can actually see in the body by using it for x-rays. And they will find a way to develop that. If you block that and say the exam does not require you to set up a camera to do x-rays, you've just stopped development dead in its tracks. And I think that's what we have. We have a system of stopping creativity. And also, the reason I say this is because from first-hand experience, I saw my child in England, where I've grown up, and I had a child. I saw his eyes being bright and wide because I ran a skate park. And if you know what a skate park is, it's a very dynamic place. People have a lot of fun there. And he grew up around that. So he was always very excited for life and all that. So he went to his middle school, a new middle school, and he made lots of friends, blah, blah, blah. He's a very popular kid. Your dad owns a skate park. You are a superstar. Within a few weeks, his bright eyes became very dull, very slowly. And he started to come to me with the most ridiculous questions, like, how do you Google this? How do you do this? When a couple of years before that, he would have been telling me how to use Google. Right. So as he's getting older, he's getting dumber. His lights are going down and dimmer. And this is what the education system is doing. It's making children in the West, it's making them hate education. They don't want to do it. They can see it's a lie because now they've got access to information, open information, Google and all these other things. And they can see that the teachers are teaching them a fraction of the truth. Yeah, because the truth is a lot bigger than the European story. History is not his story, it's our story, the human story.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Rico Jack. We are going to take a short break and then we'll return shortly. And when we return, we'll be discussing your preferred or your choice alternative. Please, audience, don't be mistaken.
Clevenard in Diaspora Television is an internet online TV service. What sets us apart is a unique combination of hit African content, first and exclusive international free movies, series, musics, news, events, documentaries, tourism, teleshopping shows, youth TV programs, and live interviews. Clevenard Diaspora Television is available throughout sub-Saharan Africa and to the diaspora markets worldwide. Take your entertainment with you wherever you go. Watch on your smartphone, tablet, laptop, smart TV, depending on your device. Watch free movies with Clevenard Movies Television. Stop searching for free movies websites and watch Clevenard Movies Television. Watch your favorite African shows anywhere at any time. Don't forget to check out our top 5 TV channels created to get you informed. TV1, Clevenard in Diaspora Television. TV2, Clevenard Youth Television. TV3, Clevenard Movies Television. TV4, Clevenard Teleshopping Television. TV5, Clevenard Tourism Television. To start watching, sign up at www.clevenard.com and follow the easy steps. Once you're done, log into the Clevenard website or app on your device, click on any one of our 5 TV channels, and hit play. We will be very satisfied and happy to welcome you to our team as one of our new business partners. Contact info@clevenard.com +34 631 279811. Website www.clevenard.com.
Welcome back to the program, and we still have on set Mr. Rico Jack, an educationist trying to make a change in African standard way of education. Now, before we went on a break, Mr. Jack, you trying to explain the difference between training and education, and you said that choice or the standard of education in Africa is not what we ought to be learning. All right. Now, what is your own choice alternative?
So, pardon me. So I think the alternative is very clear, and it's been tried and tested in many places, but it seems to be for only a privileged few. I think what we need to do is to look at our population and think about how it's going to serve them. And in different parts of the continent, we're going to need to adapt it to cultural norms and traditions and so on. We don't want to, isolate or, exclude some of our people. What we want to do is to negotiate a future of education that serves the future of African people on this planet. We need African people to see themselves as guardians of the planet, as all humans are, as people who are harvesting and farming the land, as people who are responsible for the future of the planet. I think education should be about the planet, not just about one country. I'm in Tanzania at the moment. A lot of Tanzanian people believe their life is in Tanzania, just Tanzania. They haven't been anywhere else. The majority of people don't travel outside of Tanzania. It's been very isolated. I don't think it's the same for every African country, but you look at that as the core to the education system, and you link children together on the whole continent. They have something in common. They're on the continent of Africa. I spoke to children just yesterday at my friend's house, and I asked them about empanadas, which are from South America. And they didn't even know where South America was, yet they've been looking at the map, the world map. They couldn't tell me the countries in South America. Now, they need to know that the African people in South America, they need to know the influence of African people there. Yeah, that we went over on boats many centuries ago, and they thought we were gods because we had agriculture. We came with compasses, we came with the plow, and those people made statues in our honor that we call the Olmec heads. The totems that are made in South America with African lips and African noses, and these African features are very clear in those statues that were in honor of people who are very high up in those societies. Now, modern African children don't know that. That's part of the problem with the education system. It's not about African people feeling like guardians of this planet. It's about them feeling as if they are drones producers for a master. And I'm sorry to use those words. It might sound very insulting, but the master is still here, embedded in our brains, and it's fear. We need to take the fear out of education. We need to take the fear out of our children. I do not appreciate when our 7-year-old twin girls here in Arusha, in Tanzania, are afraid that they might get a question wrong and they will get the stick when they go to school. The stick is a corporal punishment where we whip our children for getting an answer wrong. If a child gets an answer wrong in my class, it's my fault, not the child's fault. They're the supercomputer. I haven't tapped into that supercomputer well enough to put the program in there so that it performs to the high enough standard. Why am I taking a whip and violently hitting a child? We need to stop this.
Right. So in achieving this, what do you think is the role of the government?
The role of the government is to get out of the way and to let the people teach the children, let the people nurture the children, to not centralize everything. We need things to be localized. The government should facilitate that. The government should know, and you might want to kick me out of Tanzania for saying this, you should know that you are here to serve us, the people, and that the people should be trusted by you because we trust you to do your job. And you should trust us to be your governors because actually you work for us. Every government should know this. This might put a target on my head. I doubt it will,
But surprisingly, in Africa, we don't really know that. The government actually think the people work for them. But how do I put it now? They don't believe that the government work for the people. In Africa, it's the other way around.
So there's a simple way of
And it's
testing that.
considered a whole lot of
There's a
progress.
simple way of testing that. And I've challenged a few of my colleagues and friends here in Tanzania. If you feel that people are not listening to you or people are actively working against you to stop you from doing something, don't put your energy in fighting them. Put your energy in making your program the most successful, the most exciting, the most pleasurable, yeah? And everything will fall in place. Because when you have success, people like a winner. When you have success, you have a following. When you have a big following, look at Wode Maya, the annoying African village boy. Yeah, we love Wode Maya. He is just himself. So many people try to pull him down, including government officials. People try to lock him up. He's a YouTuber, yeah, who's just expressing himself. But they don't want us to express ourselves and all of that because it pulls a spotlight on them and makes them work harder. Ignore them. Put your own programs together. Yeah, don't depend on them. They will soon come back into serving the people when we are more successful without their intervention, without their help. So we can only take it upon ourselves to make our programs super successful without government intervention, without donors. You know, donors, wow, donors. I'm sure we can create products to sell to them so they become customers. We create products, they buy those products, and they are not giving us anything for free because free does not exist. There's always someone paying for that. So how about we do something? We make successful programs and we market them across the world, and we think about our success liberating us from government control, from something we call charity, which is the worst thing that's ever been invented. The Congo Free State was a charity, believe it or not. 11 million people wiped off the face of this planet by a charity. Yeah. How about we take self-responsibility and we compete on a high level and we actually make all of our programs more successful on this planet? And then they'll listen to us and then they'll see the brilliance of African people, which we see every day. We know we are brilliant. But if we can just, as a continent, focus on ourselves, don't copy other people. Let's focus on ourselves and let's make our programs more successful than anyone else. Our governments will fall in line because we're not trying to be anyone else. We're not trying to have all these pointless elections that just get another dictator in place who just feeds his own family and has a Swiss bank account. Yeah? Why don't we have an African bank account instead of a Swiss bank account? Why don't we have accountability? So forget those people. I'm looking at you and I'm looking at me. Let us be the answer.
Right. So when you are talking about the answer, like you said earlier, you said it is very easy to trade blames, to point fingers. But now let's look at it actually. In this education sector in Africa, not just the government has a role to play in it. Even the parents has a role to play. The students themselves has roles to play. Okay, because I've had a case of my own, and I've had to listen to some parents tell you, let them copy the notes. Okay, and if they are not copying the notes right, flog them thoroughly. And I'm like, for real, this is the 21st century where you're having 7-year-old kids in diaspora doing one or two stuff with ICT itself. Now, for such parents, for such a child, I believe that education is all about dominance, about being forced to do one or two things. What is a recommendation for them?
So I'm a non-violent educator. I believe in cooperation. I believe in a contract, and that contract can be ended at any point by each party. If the child does not want me to educate them, they can walk away and I can walk away. If I don't want to educate the child, I will walk away, right? So it sounds a bit non-committal, but to me, I think it's about respect. This is another human being. This is another entity, and I should treat them with the highest respect, no matter what age they are. I am not in charge of them. I am not their jailer. I am not their general or commander. I will not make them do anything. That is not education. So my answer is that we should look at ourselves and look at the way that we treat other people. So whether they're children or adults, what is it that we are depending on for cooperation? Because is it true cooperation or is it coerced? So this is quite fundamental. It's easy to coerce a child, isn't it? Because we are supposed to be the bigger,
Exactly.
the more responsible, the more knowledgeable, and all of that. It's easy, but
Exactly.
all we're doing is replicating another form of maybe the part of us that isn't working. Yeah, because when you give up or when you surrender yourself to another person and you say, okay, I'll do whatever you say, you're not at your best. You know, so we want the children to be at their best. And that means we're not asking them to surrender. We're studying them and we're looking at how we can support them. So if you feel that you don't have the resources to do this, they go to a traditional school and that's all you can manage at the moment, I don't blame you. But when they come home, you can supplement their so-called education with a supplementary education. You can tell them about African sheroes and heroes, so that when they open a book and all they can see is people that don't look like them, they can put that book down and pick up maybe a product that we've designed, which is flashcards. We have a series of flashcards, and they can have a look through the flashcards and they can see 49 different African individuals that shape the world that we live in. Yeah, scientists, leaders, artists, musicians, and all sorts of people who shape the world that we live in. Those children will then go into school with a different attitude. I can and I will. So to me, there's the answer right there. We want our children to feel respected, not coerced, and not threatened. You do not teach anyone by threatening them. All you're teaching them is that you're stronger now, and they should be stronger than you to beat you. So violence begets violence. Okay, so when you force a child to do something, it's the same as violence. What we want to do is to study
Exactly.
and look at how we can support them to achieve things that we haven't achieved.
So would you recommend a complete overhaul of the curriculum in the education?
So revolution is very attractive and might be very alluring for someone like me to go, yeah, it doesn't work like that for me. We have systems in place right now, and I'm not 100% against schools. I think schools give parents a lot of time to create income for the family. They give the children a way of learning to learn, but then they stop being productive at a certain place, and I'm not going to say exactly where that is because it must be different in every school. I've also been to some brilliant schools, which are traditional schools, but they're brilliant and they do something slightly different from the other schools. Right here in Arusha, we have a School of St. Jude. We see their buses absolutely everywhere, picking kids up from all over the region, and they pick the most intelligent, poor children from different areas, and their policy is to go after the most poverty-stricken children. And they've got some of the most intelligent children coming out of their schools with a standard way of learning or standard way of teaching. Now, imagine if we can supplement that with an African Achievers education package. Because I asked some of those school children about history, and they told me about European history. We're in Africa, and they're telling me about European history. So I asked them about these achievers, and I was told about Nelson Mandela. I wasn't told about Winnie Mandela, who's in our flashcard pack, who actually made it possible for Nelson to be released, by the way. Yeah. But I was told about somebody who's acceptable for the Western world. How about the other people in this pack of 49 individuals? How about what they did for the world? So I went through a few more of them, and we had to stop because it was getting a little bit embarrassing. Our children do not know what our people have done for this world, not just for Africa, for the world. They don't know GPS was created by a black woman. They don't know that George Washington Carver stabilized the dashboard on the car, because we have the African sun right here, but in the US, they have hot sun as well. That melted the dashboard. So the Henry Ford Motor Company hired this man who worked for almost for free because he didn't want to work for the Henry Ford Motor Company. He wanted to work for Tuskegee University, which is a black university. He stabilized that dashboard by through his science work, through the chemistry work that he was doing. He found the right compounds to stabilize that. Now the whole world has dashboards that don't melt in the sun because of a black man, right? And we have all of these advances that our children are not being taught about, even in a brilliant school like School of St. Jude. They're not being taught about most of these things. So I've donated a pack of the flashcards to School of St. Jude and to some other schools in Arusha, just to see what the feedback would be and if they can work that into their curriculum. We're not trying to revolutionize or get rid of everything right now. There is nothing to fill that gap at the moment, other than this energy that we need to develop in order to instill self-pride and self-belief in our children, so that when they hold their heads up high and they speak a foreign language, they're not embarrassed. You know, that they are actually happy to have invested time into speaking this foreign language, and they can speak it thoroughly with confidence. And they can tell the rest of the world that African people have actually done A, B, and C for you.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Mr. Rico. It's been a great time talking with you and then getting one or two things from your write-up. Now, I needed to leave us home with a message from Great Africa. Okay, it's like almost summarizing the entire talk now. So what is your message for Africa from Great Africa?
Sorry, I didn't understand that.
A message for Africans, okay, from Great Africa, from your own end now. What is your message for Africans, the government, the students, the teachers, and all others?
Cool. My message might sound a little bit arrogant. I hope that the people who know me know that's not me. I am very humble. But it is very, very important now that we start listening to these words. They're not my words. We have educators from the past 20, 30 years who have been saying the education system is redundant. Why are we doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? As African people, we built the pyramids, which still can't be matched by any other civilization. 15,000 years ago, we had the most high mathematics of any humans. And right now, the skyscrapers in New York are built to a tolerance of 1.25 inches. Those pyramids 15,000 years ago built to a tolerance of 1/4 inch. That means the vertical line that goes right through, if you were to put a vertical line through those pyramids, are 1/4 inch accurate from bottom to top. The same height of building in the skyscrapers in New York is 1.25 inches, because that's all they can manage. So as African people, we had brilliance in ancient times. Let's tap into that brilliance. Let's celebrate it. Let's tell the world about it. Let's tell our children about it. And let's see what our new shoots who are coming out of the ground, our children, can do to change the face of this planet. Are you up for that challenge as an African? Are you up for that challenge to actually be an African and not just a dark-skinned person with a colonized mindset? Or you might call it white mindset, but I call it a colonized mindset because we've been colonized in many different ways, including colonizing ourselves. So let's look at this. We're not just dark-skinned people. We're brilliant people with a history that is brilliant and formed the basis of civilization for all humanity. My message is I want to be a true African who celebrates Africanness and is not ashamed to say, I am an African from Malawi. I was born in Malawi. I still have a Malawi passport. And that should mean something when I go on the world stage. Let's make it mean something.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Rico Jack. Thanks for being my guest today, and thank you for being so educated.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your
to us
time.
Africans, and I do hope that
it's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and we wish you all the best.
And I really hope we can have a deeper conversation, a more continued conversation about this. It's not about me, it's about us.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much. And viewers, we draw the curtain here for today. You've heard him, Education in Africa, a curriculum where we do things the way we teach, and so many other stuff needs to be looked into, and most suddenly is complete overhaul. Thank you so much. That's all we have for you in this edition. Till we come your way again next week with another guest on this program. I remain Frank Kalidimundia. Have a blessed day.